Perspective is an interesting thing to think about, or at least the idea of other people's perspectives. I think the idea of completely disregarding your own perspective, your own viewpoints, your own beliefs, and trying to understand a set that's completely different to your own is something that people can struggle with sometimes. Our beliefs and opinions are, in some cases, tied so closely to who we are as individuals, it can be difficult to imagine how anyone could disagree with us, because we don't know what's going on in other people's minds. It's the one thing about a person we can't know for sure, because we just aren't them. But you and I know that isn't the whole story. Attack on Titan is a story with several different overarching themes: the innate human desire for freedom, the simultaneous beauty and cruelty of the world, and the endless cycle of violence, hatred, and bigotry. And somewhat related to that last one is a more subtle theme that, while it's always been there from the start, has only become more and more apparent as the story has progressed over the final two arcs. Perspective. Specifically, the perspective of our enemies. From the very first episode, morality in Attack on Titan is presented as being fairly black and white. The victimized humanity justly fighting for survival and freedom against the oppressing, monstrous, inhumane Titans. It's a very obvious, clean system. Humans good, Titans evil. It's the same kind of propaganda and thinking used in countries during times of war to whip up the people against a faceless, non-human enemy. Eren, especially in the first two seasons, represents the logical product of a system like this. A system which condones and encourages such binary morality, radicalizing beyond belief. He refuses to see the Titans as anything other than monsters, deserving of nothing other than his pure, absolute fury. Typical shonen tropes like hot-headedness and determination are twisted and framed in a much darker sense than is usually seen, giving way to destructive recklessness and a terrifying, almost gleeful hatred. And it isn't just Titans as well. After killing 3 men when he was 9, he shows absolutely no remorse, shame, or guilt at having just committed murder, stating that they were just animals. Not bad people, or even evil. Animals. An explicit dehumanization of his enemies. For the first few arcs, this view isn't really questioned or focused on too much, outside of Irvin's infamous question, Levi's advice to Eren about never truly knowing what the right choice is, and a few subtle bits of foreshadowing. It isn't until the female Titan arc where we see our first challenge of the simple bad people bad, good people good morality. Initially, when introduced, the female Titan comes across as just another evil, albeit exceptionally intelligent, Titan, another monster for Eren to destroy on his mad quest for revenge. But this time, things are different. This time, the enemy isn't a faceless monster. It's a human. A friend. It's Annie. For the first time in his life, Eren is faced with a situation that directly goes against the system of morality he's lived with since he was born. He's faced with a situation involving a person he thought was good doing bad acts, which does briefly shake him out of his rigid mindset and forces him to seriously consider, for the first time in his life, what his enemy wants. However, he quickly falls back on his comfortable, childish morality, convincing himself that Annie must have always been bad, thus it's okay to continue demonizing her. He does the same with Reiner and Bertolt when they're revealed to be the colossal and armored Titan. On a bit of a side note, I think it's interesting to note that Eren's reaction to this betrayal is far more extreme and emotional than it was to Annie's, most likely because of his closer relationship to Reiner, which leads him to a much deeper denial in order to cope with the trauma, whereas with Annie, he at least thought about why she was doing what she was doing. With Reiner and Bertolt, he goes absolutely insane, at one point telling them, to their faces, "It is my mission to see you suffer in the worst way possible." However, Eren is forced to grow up, and if the ordeals with the Titan Shifters started to shake up Attack on Titan's binary morality, then the events of Season 3 almost completely shatter it. Season 3 Part 1 is where we really start to see this theme of perspective begin to rise its head. For the first time, the villains aren't these unknowable outsiders with mysterious, vague goals that involve the destruction of mankind as we know it. These villains come from within the walls. They're undoubtedly human, and perhaps most importantly, we understand why they're doing what they're doing. Even if we don't agree with the actions of King Fritz, Rod Rice and Kenny, we know why they do what they do. Karl Fritz's goal, and by extension the goals of all his descendants, is to allow his people to live in blissful ignorance, if just for a few more decades, peacefully unaware of the horrifying world outside. Kenny, initially portrayed as a murdering, self-serving serial killer, is a murdering, self-serving serial killer, but his self-awareness of this fact leads him to seek out the power of the founding Titan, having been inspired by his best friend Uri to try and better himself, to try and understand Uri's beliefs, to empathize with him, to see his perspective. We are no longer killing easily dehumanized monsters. We're killing people. And we're not just killing people. We're killing them because they believe in something we don't, something the 104th initially struggle with, especially Armin. Eren's faith in his morality is shaken as a direct consequence of his entire self-image being shattered. After learning his father is responsible for the death of much of the royal family and quite possibly humanity's continued subjugation by the Titans, he gives in to his long-growing self-loathing and comes out the other side a completely different person, mellowing his personality dramatically. When asked by Historia if he still intends to kill Reiner and Bertolt, Eren just states he has to. And when asked if he wants to kill them, he again just says he has to. A warning, the rest of this video will contain spoilers for chapters not yet covered by the final season, and in fact relies on knowledge of these chapters. Skipping ahead slightly to the start of the Marley arc, we see this theme of perspective come full circle. After a 4-year time skip, we begin following a new set of characters, the very enemies that Eren wearily swore to destroy upon reaching the ocean, with longtime antagonist Reiner taking Eren's place as main character, and giving us deeper insight into the monster who destroyed the walls, killed hundreds, humanizing him, making us sympathize with him. And not just him, but all the new characters, the Eldian warriors and even a few sympathetic Marlians, this previously faceless, vague collective enemy. These become our new viewpoint characters, and by forcing us to see things from their perspective, to know and understand them, it makes it all the more difficult when our old main characters come back for their spotlight, now portrayed in a far more ambiguous, nearly villainous light, especially Eren. A complete reversal of the beginning of the story. From this point onwards, the world and story become far more grey. For a time, it completely lacks a central antagonist, instead becoming a power struggle between various factions and ideologies, all of whom believe themselves in the right. The royal government of Paradis, who wish to establish friendly relations with the outside, Marley and the rest of the world, who, after Eren's destructive showcase, would rather just have Eldians wiped off the map, Zeke and his followers, who wish to use the founding Titan to sterilize all of Eldia and bring about a peaceful end, and the Jaegerists, who seek to use the rumbling to destroy the rest of the world and bring about a new empire for their people. Even if some might be more sympathetic than others, there are still valid reasons for both support and opposition for all, some of which are acknowledged in story by the people from opposing sides. Even so, eventually Eren and his Jaegerists come out on top, positioning him as the story's definitive main antagonist from this point onwards, with most other characters coming together in an alliance, putting aside their differences to stop him from destroying the world. And it's in the face of complete annihilation do we finally begin to see opposing sides talk and understand each other. The obvious pinnacle of this is the fireplace meeting in chapter 127, Eve's End, but the precursor to this is set up in the form of Gabby's character arc, which sees her grow closer with the family of Sasha Brous, whom she killed, and upon finding this out, her father is presented with the opportunity to take revenge, but instead, he puts away the knife, refusing to add to the cycle of violence and shattering Gabby's view of the so-called Island Devils, kickstarting a reversal of her views and an acknowledgement of her wrongs. I could probably make an entire video just about this one scene, but for the sake of time, let's just say that Gabby is emblematic of one of the major ideas posed by late-stage Attack on Titan, that bigotry comes from not knowing your enemies, and by talking with and understanding them, realizing that they are just as much human as you are, that bigotry can crumble. Empathy in its place. At the time of writing this, Attack on Titan is approaching its final few chapters, with the final confrontation with the Alliance and Eren up in the air. But regardless of who wins, I don't think that'll affect the overall message. Of course, if Eren wins and destroys the world, then there will undoubtedly be a more nihilistic tinge. But at the end of the day, I think what it tells us is that our most hated, terrifying monsters are, more often than not, just people like us. They aren't giant, evil, brutish demons that vaguely resemble us. They are us. They're people, probably no different to you or me. The only question is, have we realized that too late? Thank you so much for watching. This is my first video ever, and I'd love to keep making these kinds of videos, not just about AOT or anime, but about all sorts of topics that strike my fancy. I can't promise a consistent schedule right now, but I do intend to make more videos in the near future. If you're interested in that, then like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.